what were those couple of bleeps in the night?
Exactly. I don't want to depress you, but you know, it's oh no, what could I have caught? Hi Graham, nice to chat to you. So I understand you've got a few questions for me.
Yes, hello, Matt. Thank you very much. I've got a number of carp-related questions for you, and the first one, which I want to hit you with, is coated braids versus supple braids, or the stiffness, semi-stiff hook links. Which one do you want to choose at a swim?
First of all, so you know, should you use supple or should you use mono? The first consideration is one of casting distance.
Yeah.
If you know how to cast, and that means that you can cast successfully, accurately, and you can hit the clip, feel the lead down.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you can do that confidently at 50 and 60 yards, then you know, just using a normal supple braided hook link in 25 pound, I see no issues with doing that whatsoever. But if regularly hitting the clip is something that you struggle with, then I think you're running a risk if you're using a supple hook link. It's not really gaining you anything. The other downside of supple materials, of course, is cost. You know, a supple hook link is expensive.
Mm.
You know, about similar price to a coated hook link. So, right, the bottom line is I would want to use mono whenever I can.
Okay.
The starting point, which I would advise for anyone that's working out, well, what hook link is best, would be, well, why not just start off with using a piece of your main line as a hook link? Yeah.
Yeah.
What main line do you use?
I use PB Products Control Mono.
Yeah.
It's
In what?
18 pound, I think it is.
Forget breaking strain.
Yeah.
I want to know the diameter.
I would say it's no more than 0.3 is the 18.
That's quite thin.
Yeah.
And if that's all you need, then great. I would use 0.30 mono is the sort of mono that I would use for casting a very long way. I wouldn't want to tackle you know, some of the venues that I do tackle with that thinner mono, because it just wouldn't be up to the job. I know it says that 18 pound, and you might think, well, 18 pound is plenty strong enough. 18 pound doesn't really matter to me. It's the diameter that's important. But going back, so can you use 0.3 control mono, yeah, as a hook link material? Yes, absolutely no issue at all. If it's stiff enough to be able to, with your casting style, to be able to cast the distance that you need. Yeah,
I'm with you.
So
I mean, most of my fishing would be done a maximum of like 80 yards.
You wouldn't need a leader to achieve that, especially not with 0.30 mono. So you're fishing 0.30 mono straight through. Are you using rig tubing or a leadless leader?
Rig tubing is one of the rules. Yeah.
What I would do is just experiment, first of all, with just using some of your 0.30 mainline as a hook link. I would do like 6 casts with a baited rig, with or without PVA, if that's what you're normally using. Land the rig, feel the lead down, dunk, and then leave it for a couple of minutes, wind it back in. Every time I do that, I would look at the rig, right, what tangle? Did anything tangle? Yeah? Did it work? If you'd have left it there on the lake bed, was it fishing? And if you can do that 6 casts on the trot, and it comes back every time 100% tangle free, trouble free, then if your main line is strong enough to land the sort of fish that you're fishing for, then why can't 0.30 mono do it? You know?
Would you have aided that last part of the hook link with an anti-tangle sleeve?
Yeah, I probably would. Yeah, a little anti-tangle sleeve. No harm in doing that.
Over.
I'd experiment with that, and then depending on how that goes, you might decide, well, I mean, one of the things that I often do, I might be using 0.30 mono or even 0.28 mono, but I would be using a 0.50 mono hook link at the business end, right? And I'm using that for anti-tangle.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, you haven't got any tangle problems with the mono mainline.
No.
Yeah. It's the hook link where you need that stiffness. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's my kind of go-to solution. 0.50 mono and a thin main line, whack it 80 yards, and that's gonna work great.
It
So
was so you would your first port of call would be a mono hook link as against a coated braid. Now,
always,
the
always,
question which raises to me where normally I would use a coated hook link is, you strip that little bit back, so you got that 10 mil or so after the hook card,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
you just,
yeah,
I've got to have movement. I've got to have movement. When the carp picks it
yeah,
up, I've got to have
yeah,
movement. Is the carp coming that way to the rig? Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? So
yeah,
that's the mental
yeah,
block for me.
yeah. Okay, I I get these questions loads of times. If you've never fished with a really super simple 0.50 mono hook link material, it's really difficult to wrap your head
Yeah.
around. Well, there's no movement.
Mhm.
Everything I've read, everything I've watched, all the YouTube
Mhm.
videos, etc. Or going back to my day, the DVDs and stuff. They tell you have to have that supple gap. You have to have a stiff bit of hook link, and then you have to have a supple bit of hook link. And without that, you won't catch a carp. Um, and that is not the case. It's not the case because I've been catching carp on simple mono rigs and not much else from really challenging waters for years and years and years. And one of the best anglers that I know, he fishes with nothing more than 25-pound big
Yeah.
game as a hook. And this is the sort of guy that will just rock up to some big boy
Yeah.
waters, Rainbow, Orient, and he whacks out 3 big game rigs, uh, razor sharp hook, mono hair, and he catches some absolute chunks. The guys that I got to spend some time with, and I was very lucky to meet some key individuals along my journey, which kind of steered my path. When I saw how simple they make carp fishing, and they just boil it all down to the absolute fundamentals: sharp hooks, strong knots, simple anti-tangle rigs, and that's it. All their other focus is getting on the fish, and bait application. That's as simple as they keep their fishing.
There really is a case of less is more.
Exactly. I've been doing personal one-on-one tuition work at the lake. Um,
Mhm.
well, I've been doing that for 15 years, and I've met over 1,000 anglers. I've done 600 nights at the lake myself, so I've seen a bit.
Yeah.
I see what's working. I see what's not working. It's a very unique position. It can be very easy to get sucked into watching an
Yeah.
underwater film and seeing, reading something into it. And the people that are making these films, are it's a marketing tool. There is a marketing message that's coming across there. It's very easy to let that kind of completely cook your brain, really.
Which in the end doesn't it's not helping.
No,
You'll catch,
yeah, yeah. Look,
but you could be hampering it.
yeah, it's quite a strong thing to say, but I think a lot of the time, an angler is being successful, and you're being successful, but and you're like, well, I know how to fish. I'm catching a few.
Mhm.
I'm doing all right. Well, how about if you turn that on its head and you say to yourself, well, okay, maybe I'm catching not because of what I'm doing, but in spite of what you're doing.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
it's it's a different perspective.
It makes sense though.
And there's another adage that we use in that is which you know what you've caught, right, but you don't know what you haven't caught. Okay, so
Yeah.
you're fishing the water, and you know if you've been fishing that water regularly and you're experienced and you know it well, and you know that on average you can go there, and you know lots of different waters. You might be fishing for a bite a day, you might be fishing for 10 bites a day. Yeah.
Yeah.
And on average, that's what you get, and that's what you think you're doing all right. It's only when you start looking at another angler, what they're doing, and they might rock up and they might take it apart. If you're happy with it, it doesn't matter. Fishing's meant to be fun, so enjoy it. I'm always looking at what how to be just that little bit better. What is the potential? I'm not saying that I'm different. It's the same for me. I catch in spite of what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Okay? But
Yes.
it's just a different way of looking at it, really. So, but to get back to the thing about the suppleness, um, you don't need it. Suppleness for me, if I was to go down some of the big park lakes I fish, 100 acre, 500 acre venues, you know, big casts, no boat, big winds. You know, you can barely see the lead because the wind's melting your eyeballs as it's
Yeah.
blowing in at 60 kilometers an hour. And you're just hearing for the lead to thwack in. You need a super robust rig that will sort
Mhm.
itself out
Yeah.
as it fires into the water. There's no feeling the drop. Um, you're just open to get it out there as best as you can. And I've done it. I've done the tests, and I've spoken to other anglers that fish these type of waters. And whenever you introduce a little supple section next to the hook, you're introducing tangle risk. Two guarantees in this world: if your hook is blunt, you're not going to catch a
Mhm.
carp. If your rig is tangled, you're not going to catch a carp. So my entire focus is sharp hooks, tangle-free rigs, and if I get that right, then if I'm doing the right thing at the right time, then I stand a chance. Yeah. So
Yeah, and I guess with the mono hook link, you have inadvertently got a self-setting rig. You know,
yeah,
from the grebe
yeah,
or the coots coming to pick it up. You
yeah,
know, within reason, it's certainly going to reset itself considerably more than a supple. Or
yeah,
if you've got that stripped back section,
yeah.
you know, as it
You
doubled over.
you get
You
those
know,
doubts in your mind. You know, you get that. If
yeah,
I'd be exactly the same. If I was fishing a classic coated braid combi style rig on a water with bird life,
yeah,
and I get a little kind of double beep or whatever, and I could see birds diving over the
yeah,
rig. How many minutes do you think I would leave it there, thinking, "Oh, has that have they messed that up?"
yeah,
You know, you've got to wind it in
yeah,
and check it. If you're fishing that way, because of the challenges that you've got, and you really can't afford to leave a rig sat there, every time you bring that rig in, especially if there's any gravel out about on the bottom or branches or leaves or anything like that, the chances of you dinking the hook on the retrieve is really very high.
and I guess if you're fishing a mono hook link like you do, it's not going to cost you much. It's not going to cost you £3 or £4 to make a new rig, is it? The main objective is you're not doing it because it's expensive. You know, you're not going to a mono hook link because it's expensive the opposite way.
No, you
There's
just
just
don't.
no
You,
need
you, you just
to
don't
go
need it.
to that.
It's 0.5 ohm on it. It's cheap. It's strong. It's reliable. It's anti-tangle. You know, you can cast it a long way. It'll be absolutely fine. You can pick it. Bird life can pick it up. Chub can interfere with it. Bream can play football with the rig. You know, it really doesn't matter. If you have a flurry of bleeps and you wind down and hit it, and all right, you didn't connect. You missed the bite. Okay, wind in. You know, I would always inspect that hook, yeah, not properly with an eyeglass. If you haven't got an eyeglass, I would do the nail test. You know, that is an
Yeah,
okay thing to do, just gently. And if that hook point is, if it slides on your nail, yeah, for me, it's in the bin. Yeah. You've got to, if
You
it's
want it
not
to catch
catching,
hold.
if it can't catch your nail, it can't catch a carp. Yeah.
I do sometimes tend to put it on a white background
Yeah.
and I can see the point
The nail test
better.
is much, much more accurate. A jeweler's loop is a very, very good quality tool. A magnifying glass isn't going to cut it. I know that you can get magnifying apps for mobile phones and stuff. Experimented with those. Can you really see a damaged hook point? No, not really. Yeah, if you're looking for a zero cost, quick and dirty test, just a light touch on the nail. If it can catch your nail, it can catch you a carp. Now, a lot of the fish that I'm fishing for are older fish, bigger fish, and the my lake has got a really kind of hard gravel bottom. There's granite and there's rocks and there's boulders, and a hard bottomed lake makes for very hard mouthed fish. Uh, and the tougher
Right.
the mouth of the fish, the sharper your hooks need to be. If the lakes that you're fishing tend to be more kind of softer bottomed, um, then the fish will probably, as a consequence, have softer mouths. Yeah. So hook
Okay.
sharpness becomes less critical. But I would absolutely guarantee that if if your hooks are good enough to pass the nail test, when you get them in position and your rig's anti-tangle and you have the confidence to sit on them and wait for the magic to happen, rather than always worrying about is it tangled, have the coots pick me up, whatever,
Yeah.
then your results will just go up and up and up.
Stack the odds in your favour. And if you can sit there in your bivvy just as you're ready to go on and think, oh no, is it tangled? Then you're not confident with it. But if you know that you are, then
Yeah,
obviously, hey, you'll sleep better, knowing that you've got
yeah.
a tangle-free, rig and bait that's presented with a sharp hook. That's kind of answered my next question regarding, weedy hook lengths, silt hook lengths, gravel hook lengths. I myself, and there must be many, many anglers, I've got every colour going, you know, and two tackle boxes, man, just with end tackle. When in theory, I could probably get all my end tackle in a
Yeah,
Chinese takeaway
yeah,
tub. It's I've got to buy the weedy green one, and
yeah,
I've got to buy it in
yeah.
soft and semi-stiff, and it's
Okay, right.
mental.
What I want to say is that look, I've been there. I've been there. I've got the t-shirt. I've got all
Yeah,
the t-shirts. Yeah, I've made every mistake that's going. Yeah, um, and
yeah,
I've got a mountain of stuff from my. I still keep the kind of. I have an archive box of multiple archive boxes from my
yeah.
years playing this game. Does color matching components, terminal tackle components, does it matter to me in my fishing? No.
Yes.
I know.
We're told
Sorry.
it matters.
Well,
We're told it
of
matters.
course, of, of,
You
of,
know,
of course. But carp angling is a business, and
it is, and people do get slated by the so-called keyboard warriors, which I don't. I think it's better to make the mistake by buying the different ones, and then you hear from people such as yourself, that it's not
but
needed.
look, it's but I understand the temptation. I fell into the same trap. You want to experiment. It's a fun
Yeah,
sport to be creative,
yeah,
to follow your instinct. You have these ideas, you have these guesses, and you buy this stuff, you have a play, and it doesn't matter to me in my fishing. I'm not saying that in every single carp angling situation it makes zero difference. I'm not fishing waters that are very different to in terms of clarity and color to what I fished in the
mhm,
UK. I haven't spent a lot of time on crystal clear weedy waters. I have done them. I fished linear, I fished horseshoe, I fished Abbey Lakes in northern France. You're fishing a gravel spot. You don't have to change to a gravel collared hook link to be successful.
No.
Because I've seen,
Yeah.
1,000 anglers. Anyone that asks for my help, or we do a formal tuition session with, are we focusing on what color rig components you're using on what spot? Is that a factor? No, not at all. Lots of tiny little details matter in this sport. The color matching of terminal tackle components, for me, has absolutely zero role to play.
I know that. It's a question from a personal point of view. Is I
Yeah,
needed to hear from somebody
yeah.
who's been there, who's done it. Um, I don't get to fish as often as I do, job commitments, that type
And
of
this is
thing.
this is this is the thing.
Um,
All anglers' time is limited. My angling
mm,
time is limited, but I'm exposed to this machine that is running
yeah,
24 hours a day, 7 months of the year, which is the lake. I know what they're fishing with. I know how they're fishing, and it didn't take me many years of being in that privileged position to be able to say, well, you know what? It really doesn't matter. Spend all your money on hooks, a little as possible on hook link material, um, and and time again, I see the results are just instant. Going back to this business of can carp see color? Well, they can, but the deeper that you're fishing, the less color can be seen. Everything goes a bit grey the deeper you go. So you might
mm,
be fishing with a pink pop up or a yellow pop up, and the deeper the spot is that you're fishing, the less that color yellow or that color pink will be visible to anything. Carp aren't looking for food with their eyes. Carp are not sight predators. You know, they've
no,
got all these incredibly powerful sensory organs. They can taste food buried in the silt. They can smell a
yeah,
buoy from many, many meters away, uh, uh, because scent travels very well in the water. Carp's eyes, where are they mounted? Well, they're mounted on the side of their heads.
yeah,
They've got very good, peripheral vision, which because they need to be aware of, the dangers, etc., around them. They don't have any stereo vision. They can't see what's in front of their
in
nose.
front of them.
You know, they're not. They're not swimming along and catching a glimpse out of their eye of something that's standing out on the lake bed, and wondering whether it's food or not. That's just not how they react. They would know it's food because they could sense that there is food
Yeah,
over there, and they're not going to be coming up to the hook bait and up to the rig and eyeballing all around. They don't know what a rig is. They don't know what a lead is, a hook link, or any of that is. When they feed, they're just sorting food from non-food items, um,
yeah.
and color. Color doesn't really. I don't worry about color, bait color in my in my fishing. It's not something I worry about, because if I focus on what really matters, sharp hook, anti-tangle rig, being in the right place at the right time, and having the confidence to sit behind them, and simplifying everything else and minimizing the things that I change, I haven't got anything else to think about.
You know that if you do blank on a session, it's not because of your rig presentation,
It's not because
or
I don't like my
maybe I should have,
bait.
maybe I should have gone for a pink
Yeah,
pop up. It's the fact that they just weren't
yeah,
there, or they just weren't
yeah.
interested.
Now, I mean, it's very it's very difficult to know, well, were the carp there, weren't the carp there? And the thing is that carp I get done. Everyone gets done.
Yeah.
Everyone gets picked up and rejected. Um, Now, for the last 15 years, I've 16 years really, because I was doing this before I moved out here. I've only fished with a running rig. And it's because I learned on the syndicate that I was fishing before I came here that the bite indication that you'll get from a standard semi-fixed lead clip based bolt rig, the bite indication that you get is really very, very poor indeed.
Right.
I mean, I was fishing a little syndicate venue, 3 acres, and the way to catch them was at the far margin. It was an 80-yard cast, hit the clip, stop the lead just before the reeds, drop it into the far margin. But this margin was curved. And the curve of the margin was about the same kind of distance as where you were fishing. So it was always about 80 yards. I'm fishing away, it's pure silence. And a fish showed 20 yards away from the rig. Okay. And I then got a beep. I then realised that the carp wasn't showing. The carp had leapt out of the water in the shallows, and that was the carp that I was connected to. So the carp had moved my rig 20 meters, 20 yards, without giving any indication, because it was following the margin, and the margin was, an equidistant from me, with one beep.
I can relate to that myself.
Yeah. So the bite,
Yeah.
if they move left and right on you with a semi-fixed rig, the bite indication is absolutely rubbish. The only way you get positive bite
Yeah.
indication from a semi-fixed rig is if they tear off. Now, if you're fishing a runs water where the fish are small and it's well stocked and they're hungry and competitive, then a standard semi-fixed lead clip rig fished with the lead retained, it's going to work a lot of the time, because that's the carp just aren't very difficult to catch. But if you take that in that scenario and move on to a more challenging water, fewer fish, fewer chances. I know that my carp are quite capable of picking up the rig, tensioning the hook length, and you'll get a little, the bobbin will just kind of do a little dance like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it won't slam up to the top. Sometimes it does, but it'll just do a kind of little.
So you're on like a semi-tight line.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Semi-tight, slack, really doesn't matter. The bobbin will do a little dance, and I know that in that case, that if he's doing that dance, there's a carp that has sat over my rig, and he's tensioning up that hook link, and he's just trying to spit the rig. That's what he's doing, and he's learned that if he does that enough times, that he might be able to get away with it, and that's with a running lead setup. And I get to see that movement going on with a running lead setup. Now, if you're fishing with a semi-fixed setup, you haven't got much in the way of indication, because it's not very sensitive. If your hook point is slightly off and the carp are coming along, they're picking up that rig, they're tensioning the hook link, and then they're going to use the weight of the lead potentially against you, or they're just going to suck and blow and eject the rig. And so many times you won't even know that you've been done. You might get a kind of bip, bip. How many times in your fishing have you had a kind of a little double tap like that?
And you leave it.
And you leave it. Yeah. And you've written it off to the wind, a twig, or at night it might have been a bat.
Bit of undercurrent.
Or a coot or a duck, or you've written it off as being something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, I would interpret that as you've been done.
An aborted take. Yeah.
You've had an abort. That was your bite. That was your bite.
Yeah.
And either your hooks weren't as good as they could be, or your rig wasn't as good as it could be because it might have been a bit tangled. Your lead system wasn't quite as good as it could be because the carpers used the weight of the lead against you. You might be getting 10 double beeps a day and thinking it's the wind or whatever. It was only when I moved over to a running lead system that all of a sudden I started converting those things that I didn't know were bites to a ripper of a take.
There's been many times where you wake up the next morning after your first set night or your second night, and you go and have a quick chat with the bloke next door. Was it quiet for you, mate? Oh, I had a couple of bleeps in the night, but nothing. What were those couple of bleeps in the night?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to depress you, but it's oh no, what could I have caught?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't think of it in those terms.
No.
Yeah. Um, but when you get to work with anglers, one on one, and guide them and help them and fix these, get their hooks right, get their rigs right, set them up with a simple free running inline lead system that's gives you fantastic bite indication. It's safe, it's robust, it's tangle free, and it tells you what's going on. Then all of a sudden you're joining up all the dots, and those tiny little chances actually turn into fish in the net. You know.
I can relate to that so much. Only last year, one of my locals at Trent View, again, I was fishing on it's a 70-yard maximum cast on the far bank, and I got two spots with about 20 yards in between the two baited rigs that I got out there,
Yeah.
and it was only because of the daytime, and I just happened to look down at my rod,
Mm.
and I seen my line going like that.
Yeah.
The bobbin wasn't even moving.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then I seen the line go slack a bit, and then the line was twitching. So I hit it, brought it back, and as I kind of took up the slack, I thought, what's it doing over there?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And it even then caught my left hand rod.
Yeah. Yeah.
It trailed it, and I thought, I that was a helicopter setup.
Yeah.
I do believe it was coated. I can't,
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
quote me on that, but it was definitely a helicopter setup.
Yeah.
Shortish, 6-inch hook link because it wasn't, maybe a bit of blanket weed type of thing.
Yeah.
Luckily, I got the fish in.
Yeah.
But I just thought, well, I never put it there.
Yeah.
Go fishing to that tree.
Yeah.
And it obviously picked it up. And like you say, it got nowhere else to go but
Yeah.
towards me, left or right.
Yeah. And a helicopter rig. I know I was talking about inline semi-fixed leads and lead clips, which is the one that most anglers know. A helicopter rig is a semi-fixed rig. I understand if you've got a bit of weed on your venue, why you'd think that a helicopter rig was a good option, because the lead's going to plunge into the weed, and you're going to set your top bead, and you're going to want to lay your your coated braided rig gently on the top of the weed and stuff. But you've just recounted a great story there that tells me that, well, how is the bite indication for
Yeah,
your setup? Well, it's not great.
that's it. It's doing what its purpose is to do, is to present the hook link, present the bait, but the odds are not in your favour.
No, on a helicopter rig, when the hook link is tensioned, the hook link swivel is going to pull up against the lead, and then the lead is the carp's mouth is going to be there, the lead's going to be banging around there,
Yeah,
and the chances of with that weight swinging around there on a fixed distance from the carp's lips, the chance of getting a hook pull in that situation is really quite high. I only have to think back to the days of when all I knew how to fish was lead clips, and if I had 10 bites, if I connected with 10 carp, that if I landed 8 of them, that was about normal.
mm-hmm.
I don't know what your kind of hook to land ratio is, or whether that's similar experience, but 8, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. You just accepted that as being, perfectly normal.
Yeah.
And for me, the problem is, it's not hooks, it's not rigs. Sometimes it's hooks, but most of the time it's the fact that you've got this lead banging around because it's set to retain, because you don't want to dump the lead because leads are expensive and you don't want to pull it with
Yeah.
water and all this kind of thing. Whereas the way that a running rig works, so if you imagine that's a carp's mouth there, when the carp picks up the rig, the lead is sliding away that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as the lead slides away, the more the carp pull and the more that you pull, the distance between the hook and the lead gets longer and longer and longer.
Yeah.
This running lead acts as a kind of, it's an extra bungee effect. It builds
Mm.
in a load of elasticity. I think of mono as a big elastic band
Yeah.
because you've got a load of stretch in it. Yeah, some monos are less stretchy, some monos are more stretchy, but the elasticity in mono is a good thing. So if you've got a lead system that builds in extra elasticity, and if the carp comes towards you on a running lead, the lead is going to fall in the water, but it's always maintaining tension
Yeah.
on the hook link. And this is why for me, they work unbelievably well. And they work well for every single angler that I've worked with, both in the real world and in the virtual world. I get loads of compliments every single day. Matt, your videos have helped me so much. Made the switch to running rigs, never look back, etc. It's really simple. It's really
An
effective.
extremely safe um, for the fish regarding crack-offs, because a running rig, the lead will just fall off, unlike the other lead setup, options.
You can fish a lead clip more effectively, but you need to dump the lead. It's retaining the lead that's a problem. Again, some very good anglers that I know, one of the things that they do that I'm really not keen on is they dump the lead on the take. Now, on certain super weedy waters, you really have to do that because there is no landing the fish without dropping the lead.
Yeah.
But if that's not the case, then should we be practicing a sport where we're knowingly dropping lead into an aquatic environment? Well, it's not great. It doesn't sit well with me. And there are lead alternatives and all this. And if I did have to take on a weedy water where dumping the lead was necessary, would I explore some non-toxic lead alternatives? Yeah, absolutely. But the point is that with a running lead system, you can use a conventional uh, carp lead of any size, and you don't have to drop it on the tape because it's just going to slide away. I think one of the big kind of reasons why carp anglers find it difficult to wrap their head around, well, how on earth can a running rig work? Because you haven't got this shock effect whereby the weight of the lead is not coming in full impact with the point of the hook and the carp's mouth. How can that work? Because it's been drummed into our heads that we need these, or you need to fish 4-ounce, 5-ounce leads in order to hook them. I'm not using the weight of the lead to hook the carp.
No.
It's just I don't need it. I'm using the weight of the lead to get me out to where I need to go.
Yeah.
If I'm fishing close range, I want to do a little side cast, a sneaky one down the margin, minimal disturbance. Yeah, I'll use a 1.5-ounce lead.
Yeah.
Because I'm using my rod setup and then my clutch in order to hook those carp. Because the clutch itself is capable of delivering far more hooking force than a 3-ounce lead or even a
No.
4-ounce lead.
Yeah.
I'm looking to set my clutch with about £1 or £2 of force. Now, £2 of force, that's 32 ounces of hooking
Okay.
force. Yeah. Now, 32 ounces versus a 3-ounce lead. Well, the 3-ounce lead doesn't even weigh 3 ounces in water, right? It only
No.
weighs 2.5. Yeah. So 2.5 ounces versus 32. There is no contest.
No.
The clutch has far more hooking force. But in order to achieve this setup, what have you got to do? You've got to point the rod at the lead. You've got to have a robust bankside setup. You've got to have a gripping butt rest. You've got to have bank sticks or a pod that are capable of securely holding your rod and withstanding the clutch force that is going to go through it
Yeah.
in order to hook her. The other thing that I get lots and lots of times is, well, what happens if the carp comes back towards me? Well, I think a lot of the time the carp are picking up the rig, they're tensioning the hook link, they're realizing they've got it wrong, they're then spooking, but they're spooking back towards me. Yeah. So while initially the bobbin has, might have jumped up to the top, which is often the case on a running rig, the bobbin will go to the top and then it might kind of tumble back, and then it's hanging loose. And I know one's come back towards me, and all I've got to do is wind down, lift into it, bump, and I might have to do it, twice, 3 times. Keep on winding, catch up with him. Oh yeah, we're on. Game on. I know it goes against everything that a lot of the kind of modern carp scene will want to have you believe, but it goes back to the way that I started fishing, really,
And it
before
still
carp.
serves you in good stead. It makes sense. You haven't got to use this, you haven't got to use that. It is there, and on a marketing purpose, and that's fine. If you've got a business, you want it to make money, don't you? You can choose whether you choose to buy them or not.
I think carp anglers generally, I think they want it to be more complicated than it is, because these
Yeah.
carp are these mystical, magical creatures. They're special, they're wonderful, and in order to catch one, you have to do special and wonderful things, and use something complicated and expensive, and the reality is that you don't. It doesn't have to be complicated or expensive to be effective. Give me a rod, a reel, some mono, a pack of swivels, a hook, and a little bag of oilies, and a running lead, and I'm going to catch a carp.
Yeah.
And I can give that setup to any angler of any level of ability. I don't care whether you've been fishing for five minutes or 50 years. If you boil it down to being that simple and put it in the right place at the right time and have the confidence to leave it for long enough to work its magic and for the carp to find it and make a mistake, it's going to happen.
Mm.
But having the confidence to know that, well, you've done everything right and it's just a matter of being patient, then that's a big leap of faith,
Yeah.
because there's a big anglers love to twiddle,
Oh,
you know.
definitely. Yeah, I've all done it sitting there. Once the rods are in, sitting there. I think I'll just make a rig, and I think you look at it and you think, crikey, I can pull my car with that. you know. Right, I've got a question for you, Matt, if I may, please. It's came in from a Jack Palmer in Bournemouth. I read it as
Yeah.
he has emailed me. I'm fishing a well-stocked 30-acre lake at the start of July of this year with a clear bottom, no snags. What approach would you take? As I was thinking, fishing over a big hit of bait with either pop-ups or wafters as hook baits.
30 acre, that's a decent
Mm,
chunk of water. And before we start working at thinking about kind of strategy and rigs and that, you've got to think about location. Location on a 30-acre venue is gonna be
yeah,
everything. Even if it's a well-stocked venue, you need to be in the right place at the right time. Jack doesn't say anything about whether whether it's a syndicate, whether it's a day ticket, whether it's a pre-book,
or you, yeah, you can say,
whether he's got the venue to himself, whether he's competing. Are you competing just against the fish, or are you competing against other anglers? And for me, It's about two things. It's about timing and
Mm.
location. There's some park lakes that I've been fishing over a number of years, whereby there's only a point in going to these venues when the conditions are right,
Yeah.
because the venues are too big, um, that you have to wait for the conditions to be right for the carp to even become catchable. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for these weather windows, and by a weather window, I'm looking for a drop in air pressure. Um, Nominal air pressure is 10, 15 millibars. So by low pressure, I mean sub 10, 15.
Mhm.
Um, Anything about 1,000 is great. And when you get 1,000 millibars, you're probably going to get some strong southerly, southwesterly
Yeah.
winds blowing in, and the wind literally blows the carp to the south facing
Yeah.
margin. Outside of the world of carp fishing, you only have to talk to any successful fly angler or game angler that's fished the likes of some of the big reservoirs and stuff, um, and they'll tell you, well, it's all about being where the fish are, and the fish will be on the end of the wind,
Mm.
you know. And fishing anywhere else is just a total waste of time. In terms of swim location, I want to be fishing on the north margin, and have the wind blow the carp to me. I want to survey the depth of that north margin. And the way I do it, I don't have an echo sounder, I don't have a deeper or anything like that. I don't have a boat. So how do I find out that depth information? Well, I just use a fishing rod with braid and a lead, and I wang it out, um, stop the lead just before it hits the water, bunk, feel the lead down, and then I count the drop. I always use the same size lead, same profile of lead, same weight of lead, and I know, because I can do the tests at my own lake. I can measure that depth of water, and I can make a cast using that setup in that depth of water. And I know that if I make that cast and it takes about a second for the lead to touch the bottom, maybe a second and a half in 2 meters of
Yeah.
water. Yeah. So on a bigger water, if I've got like a 2.5, 3 second drop, that's probably about 3 meters. If you're up at the kind of 4.5 seconds, that's more like
Okay.
4 meters. So with one cast, I can get an impression of the depth that at that distance. So with a simple series of casts, just cast, 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 cast along the northern margin, I can map it out in my head, and I can pretty quickly establish where is the deep
Yeah.
water. So now, if I can find a deep area of water on that northern margin, then that is where I want to target my efforts. Now, if I'm competing against other anglers, and believe me, on some of these public waters, I am, because there are known big carp in them, and I'm not the only guy in town that would really like to catch some of these fish. So you've got to have a plan A, plan B, plan C. Then I choose, when to go based on the wind, based on the weather, and I try and put myself in prime position, to be there in advance before the carp
Yeah.
rock up. You know, so ideally, I would want to pre-bait. You know,
Mm.
and my way of pre-baiting is boilies, 24 mil baits, throwing stick, one bait at a time. It's really hard work to try and bait up at 80, 90 meters
Yeah.
range, one bait at a time, but it's the only way I can do it on a public lake like this. And one bait at a time, 2 kilo bait. That's a considerable effort, but it works. It's effective, and I'll just spray a line of baits and get them out there as far as possible on a long line, 40, 50, 60 meters long. And then I'll rock up with my rigs and my rods, wang them out, and then fish 3
Yeah.
equidistantly spaced rigs along that line. Some I might fish beyond the line as well, you know, depends on what the wind's doing and all that.
Mm,
I'm not relying on finding the fish. On a big lake, they might not show.
no,
You know, I'm not casting to showing fish. In my experience, I might not see a fish
yeah,
all day long on a big water. You know, if you've got some fish to cast to, great. That makes it easy. Yeah, they're waving
well,
flags at you.
basically, yeah.
Yeah,
If you
be
set
on
your
them.
traps beforehand, knowing that
Yeah.
you've done your homework with the weather.
Does this always work? You know, of course it doesn't. Just because you think you know the water and the rules and how it should work, does it always work that way?
Now, if you
No,
caught every time you
of
went, you'd
course.
soon get bored, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of anglers think that, well, you know, anyone of the higher profile anglers are out there catching all the time. That is very much not the case. You know, there's an
No,
awful lot of
no.
blanking. There's an awful lot of blanking going on, but no one talks about, you know, stories of blanking because it's, you know, it's not catching.
There's many
Uh,
photos on the phone which something they caught last week. Well, just got to put this t-shirt on. Got to put that cap on.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, which is a
yeah,
fish that they
yeah.
caught last week. And yes, I do know that.
You've done the prep, you've done your homework. Yeah. You understand the nature of the lake. You understand that it's a big venue and yeah, you need to be where the carp are going to be before sometimes the carp even rock up or as the carp are rocking up. And then you have to have, you know, massive amount of confidence in your rig game in order to say, well, this is what I'm doing. I've set my stall out and you cast them out and sit behind them and wait for the magic to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be so easy to go to your chosen venue. Okay, let's put a marker out. Let's say, oh, that's a nice bit of a firm spot. It's castable. Right, let's get 10 kilo, especially this time of year. You could easily put 10 kilo in and wait. That's
Yeah.
a
And,
lot of
you know,
money
I know
gone out there.
bait is a tool. You know, to be successful on big waters, are you going to have to commit to spend some money on bait?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you are, because it's difficult to catch them without it. But I think it's a mistake to believe that you can just rock up, pick a swim that you fancy, or that fished well last week, put a bed of bait out, sit on it, and expect the
The
magic to
chances are,
happen.
if it's a busy
I think
water, there's probably a ton of bait in there anyway.
yeah, yeah. And carp can eat a lot of bait,
Yeah,
but you only need a rig in the right place to catch a carp.
yeah.
Yeah. And if you can get 20 or 30 baits over the top as a scattering, then great. It's going to you might catch one, you might then catch another. You know, often on big waters like that, the fish will move in shoals. So you know, one bite often preludes another. You know, if you've got bream in there, if you pick up a bream, then you've got to top up again. And you know, just because the bream might be clearing you out, just
Mm,
kind of, it's better to start off with a light scattering, see how it goes. If you pick up a bream, top up, pick up another
yeah,
bream, top up, pick up a carp, top up. Yeah, you can always put it
I'll
in,
take it.
but you
Mm,
can't take it out. You might rock up to the venue with 10 kilo of bait, and you know if you commit that 10 kilo, and depending on the stock of the venue and the nature of the carp and the size of the carp, um, I know waters where carp can clear out 10 kilo of bait in a morning or an
Oh,
afternoon.
you can imagine in a 30-acre lake like Jack's fishing, you just dump 5 kilo of boilies in any given spot in this 30-acre lake, and it's nothing.
You know, on a big water, I'd rather keep the boat going in and
Little
topping
and
up during
often.
the session. So that, yeah, so that I'm always kind of fishing over something. Otherwise, potentially after 4 or 5 hours or whatever, you might be fishing over with single
Yeah,
baits. On my own lake, you know, I encourage anglers just to fish kind of small traps and have the confidence to sit behind them. but make those traps big enough so that the carp kind of concentrate over those spots. And yeah, you can bait around them. You can have little lines of bait and a bit of a wider scattering and stuff. That's small estate lakes. Big waters are
Yeah.
different. The fish are going to be moving in large groups, large shoals, and you can have 50 carp move through an area on a 30-acre lake and literally eat everything that you've put out, even if you've put out 5 kilo or whatever.
It was looking at pop-ups, wafters as hook baits.
You don't need them.
Straight out the bag.
99% of my fishing is just done with the bottom bait straight out of the bag. Again, it goes completely against what most anglers are doing, but it's the honest truth. Sometimes I have to make them super hard, or air dry them, or salt cure them. Just because it depends what venue is and use of species, crayfish, poisson shanks. You've got a bag of boilies of whatever brand it is, and you're baiting with that. Why on earth would you want to fish on the hair with anything different? I don't look at a pop-up and think, oh, well, a carp's going to find that more attractive, even if it's the same color or different color, or a wafter. There's this myth that a light balanced bait will fly up into the carp's mouth easier. I don't worry about that. I don't worry about kind of critically balanced and delicately balanced. I want my hook bait to be just like all the other freebies out there, sat, and it's going to react the same. It's going to weigh the same. I don't worry about the fact that my hook bait is connected to a size 6 hook, and that size 6 hook has a weight. I don't believe that the carp can work out. Oh, I've picked up that one, and that feels fractionally heavier than one of those ones that I've picked up over there. That's not how carp think. Carp aren't capable of that
When they're
level
sifting
of
through all the
intelligence.
bottom debris, everything's all different sizes, isn't it? And different, shapes and different, so therefore different weights.
Carp are eating the bottom. Yeah. Carp suck up food and non-food items, and they don't. Carp don't feed like a chub do. Chub will pluck at a bait. A carp just creates a vacuum in their mouth, opens up their mouth, whoomp, the bait flies up in, the rig goes up in, and if your hook is good enough and your rig is good enough, he's going to have a difficult job spitting that out, unless you make it really easy for him. By not paying enough attention to your hook sharpness, or having poor rig mechanics. I often see kickers used on rigs, and they're making it, just for me, less effective. You're closing the effective gape of the hook. I just want a nice, big, simple, open gape on a simple mono rig.
So you'd be more than happy to, recommend for Jack Palmer, unless he's confident with the rig that he uses himself, to go with your mono.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to need, on a 30-acre water, you're going to need a robust anti-tangle rig, because you're going to be fishing at range. I'm not saying that you can't, you might, depends on the nature of the venue, but you might find the carp, tucked up neatly in a little corner margin where, you can underarm one out and catch them, half a wrap from the bank. If that's the case, great. But in my experience on larger venues, you're generally going to have to fish at range, and that means being able to effectively cast a robust anti-tangle rig a long way. And all you need to achieve that is 0.50 mono. It's cheap as chips. 100-meter spool of leader costs a tenner, and you can make 200, 300 rigs
Actually,
out.
after watching your mono rig video last year. Oh, I've not got it here. Oh, I shan't show you what's in here because it's probably just a small version of a tackle shot, really. I think I went and bought a £24 spool of the control mono. I think I do remember actually sending you a picture of it, and you corrected me on some part of it. Is you've got that small hook, rubber hook bead on the hair section,
Yeah,
and it wasn't.
yeah,
If you're holding the rig up, don't have, looking at the back of the rig, have it all in line,
yeah,
symmetrical. And I think my hook was just kicked
yeah.
out slightly, which you quite rightly
Mm.
corrected, and put it all nice and neat in a line. Get that hook bead pulled up to the bottom of the underside of the knotless knot, so it kicks
Yeah.
that hair out slightly.
I've experimented with simple mono rigs whereby you don't use that device. You just tie the mono, and then the hair exits that way, and you've got the boilie there. Yeah. But in that configuration, the boilie is in line with the hook. So if the boilie gets blown out that way, your hook
Mhm.
goes first, basically. Yeah. Less effective, right? So, and again, I just picked up this technique from one of these guys that I know, these very successful guys that no one's ever heard of, but I know what he's catching, and he achieves this kick on the hair with super glue. Does it differently, but um, the way he describes it as working is that by having the hair offset from the angle of the hook, the bait's up there, and when the bait gets blown out, the hook is still hanging lower and is clear
Yeah,
to catch in the carp's lip. You know, it's exiting at a different angle. It works. It's not so easy to, when you're starting out, to actually get that hair to exit consistently at the right angle, and get it all set up
yeah,
neat as it should be. You know, there is a bit of an art to it, and I'm not saying that you know that's really easy to achieve. I think that's one of the reasons why, um, when I moved on from doing the testing of that mono hair rig, I moved towards the my interpretation of the D rig, which we call the Deadly D. It's just a
mhm,
bit easier to achieve, um, because the management of getting the hook bait on the D is just easier. You don't have to
yeah,
fettle it so much. So, and I can see, when I show this to guests, I test this stuff out myself, and then I test this stuff out on my the anglers that come and visit me, and I can see what works, what they're struggling with. And so this is where a lot of these innovations come from. We called it, the kind of code name for it was what have you been
yeah,
fishing today? Just the bomb proof. And I test fished that before we even made the video. I used that in my own angling, both at the lake, on the river, and public waters. That's 3 years worth of test fishing before I even made the video of how to tie it. When I share something that I've done some work on,
yeah,
I'm pretty blooming confident of its effectiveness because I've
yeah.
tested the heck out of it.
Very good.
So it worked for me. I know it works for guests because they've been able to
It's
duplicate it
not just an
and go on
idea.
and be successful. And
It was an idea
it's
years
not
ago.
just,
Then you
hey, look,
implemented it and did this, did that. Then you come
yeah.
out with it.
All right. Well, Graham, I hope you've got a huge amount out of that.
You've been very open, very informative. You've answered a lot of questions for me. Thank
Yeah,
you very, very much for your time.
it's certainly given you
I'm going to
something
sort my tackle
to
box out
to
now
think
so I can
about.
fit it all in my pocket.
Well, I tell you what, a lot of the feedback I get from guests after they've spent, we've spent couple of hours together or whatever, but a full day's tuition is 6+ hours, and they leave from that and they're like, well, thank you, Matt.
Yeah,
I can now throw
I
away
know, I know,
95% of my
I
tackle
now
box.
travel light. Okay, Matt. Thank you ever so much.
It's great.